Settle down, kids. It's time for Pappy Pauper to read you another story deck. This time, we're going to try and build a mono green graveyard deck built around the Delirium mechanic and Threshold. Not unlike a traditional Stompy deck, we're going to be aggressive, linear, and focusing around combat, dealing our damage to our opponent. Here are other ways we can win. And now our story. Logging in Mulligan's wood had become quiet like a grave. A special tree that grows there can be enchanted to help travelers find their way home. However, a bout of madness rocked the nearby logging town, discouraging visitors and slowing business. So far, the illness seems contained to the grove, but even the animals have become more aggressive. A Dryad druid revealed herself, saying a delirium arose because loggers violated her sacred glen. A vocal satyr joined her claim. No stories match what happened to him next, except everyone agrees his destruction was an accident. He fell like the trees, and the beasts of the land stomped in unison like a funeral drum. Where the satyr lay, a strange plant now grows as a grim reminder of the multiple tragedies in Mulligan's wood. Thank you for indulging my storytelling habits. Our sideboard is built for very specific events in the metagame. Let's look at how they all work out, starting first against burn or mono black control. We take out 2 satyr wayfinders and replace them with life goes on, gaining us additional life, knowing that creatures are going to die a lot, giving us a nice cushion. Our own graveyards are important, but we can take out 2 satyr wayfinders again and replace them with Relic of Progenitus against decks that use graveyards against us. Being able to draw a card is also very helpful. Against fairies, we want to be able to attack through their aerial offense, so take out 3 Nimble Mongoose and replace with 3 Scattershot Archers, being able to do more damage to them in the air. Note the 2 toughness on the elf archer. Next, against elves or other token strategies, we must become very aggressive. We will take out 2 Satyr Wayfinders again and 2 Wanderer's Twig. We add in 1 Vessel of Nascency and 3 Viridian Longbows to help us. This also works against Stonehorn Tron, where the combat step is denied us. The vessel helps us find the artifact. Also, against heroic decks, we can take out 2 Wayfinder's Twig and 2 Satyr Wayfinders. Add in 1 Vessel of Nascency, taking out 1 Nimble Mongoose, giving us a vacuum of 4 cards, and replace those with Sylvok Replica. Also good against affinity decks with their artifacts. And that is our sideboard. We begin our first game with strong opportunities to set up. Nimble Mongoose looks too good to pass up here. Our opponent is using the new Triomes lands. Looking at different new builds always intrigues me, because I like brewing outside of the metagame. If you like those kind of decks, be sure to subscribe to Pappy Pauper for more family-friendly decks for under 10 tickets. Here we show our first Delirium creature. We want to begin putting more cards into our graveyard and have opportunities to do that very soon. That actually helps us. The spell that caused us to lose some creatures helps fill our graveyard, although we did lose Nimble Mongoose. We can continue to build a strong board presence. What I like about this, that's an interesting play. Our opponent seems to be having their own unique brew, having lots of different spells available to them with a different access to mana in their lands. It feels something like Tron Light. What do you think of their deck? Let me know in the comments below. It does seem to be a very grindy matchup, but thankfully our deck is also built for a longer game too. I would have liked to have been able to use the bestow mechanic of the Leafcrown Dryad, but here I think it's good just to have an additional attacker on board. Knowing that our opponent uses destruction spells against us, having multiple ways to split that up seems like a better than a one all-in strategy, and thus proves my point. Note that our opponent has Sprout Swarm, something that they were able to tutor for with mystical teachings. That becomes important later on, and I want you to pay very close attention to what spells our opponent plays here in the immediate future. They're going to try and grind out a very long game with small blockers. And counter magic, as well as other destruction spells against us. We continue to slowly chip away at their life total, bringing them to 2. Now they tutor up for Weather the Storm to try and save themselves and get by a little more time. They still have the option to buy back Sprout Swarm, giving them some small blockers. What follows next is important. Note the sequence and timing. On my turn, I cast a creature spell, and storm count is 1. Sprout Swarm is count storm 2, giving 3, which is a lot of life back total for them. Thankfully though, we have Trample in our Backwoods Survivalists, and that might be enough to overcome if we continue to be aggressive in our attacks. Their small blocker can only do so much, and here having Trample feels very effective. Our plan seems to be working. We seem to be able to find lots of good value creatures, fighting through their disruption against us. This long, grindy matchup continues on until the trample math no longer really adds up. Our opponent realizes this, not finding the answers they need with Augur of Bolas, and concedes the game to us. Using the graveyard as an extension of our hand feels great and gives us lots of value. Here, let's look against what we have and what will become an Orzhov deck. Our Satyr Wayfinder begins to do a lot of work for us, filling our graveyard, and our Nimble Mongoose already on board likes this exchange. Part of the reason I like using stories to help with the deck building design is it helps me remember what is in my deck. Because I like deck building theory, I like to remind myself what is in the deck. For example, the idea of having the animals stomp the ground in unison at the death of the satyr reminds me that I have multiple creatures with trample, so that I can remind myself of when to use ram through. Hopefully those stories help remind you of what cards are in the deck as well, as also being entertaining. Here we seem to have too much value, and our opponent realizes this and concedes the game. Here we have our second of 3 games against red deck wins. I lost the first game due mostly to spells and saw very few creatures. Here, they play more creatures in the second game. There's a valuable lesson to be learned in the second and third games especially, and I wanted to share the value of them both. I feel good about our sideboard choices that we made, and think that we can have a good matchup against red deck wins. Here I want to have more cards in the graveyard before I cast Grapple with the Past. Also, Nimble Mongoose wants more cards in there, even though it has Shroud, which might become important considering red deck wins will want to target some of my creatures. I want it to still be beefier than a 1/1. Our opponent has lots of value, and I become quite concerned about our loss of life quickly in the game, but find a Thermo Alchemist to be problematic. So take it out using Ram Through, probably one of the better cards in the deck. I am willing to trade to preserve our life total, even though I don't have Threshold yet. I don't need yet to crack the Wanderer's Twig because I want to have more creatures on board. If I had leftover mana, I would consider it, but I want to be able to have more threats on board, and I seem to have good enough mana for what I have to present board presence. And they know that it would be I'm surprised they did not attack with at least one of their creatures to try and get us down for more damage. I think that was a mistake on their part. Our opponent will not be able to surmount our trample damage, and in the last game gets stuck on one land, thus losing game 3, reminding us to always play out your games. Thank you for watching the videos. Please let me know what you think in the comments section below, and be sure to subscribe for more family-friendly Pauper content for less than 10 tickets. Until next time, this is Pappy Pauper, encouraging you to be uncommonly magical.